your notebook, sorry.
Okay, hello everybody. We're gonna begin our second meeting for this Lab 20, which is unusual, but it's great. And I'm gonna share the Lab 20. Oh no, sorry, that's Lab 19. Where's Lab 20? Here you
That
go.
was 20.
That was what? Wait,
This
no,
is 20.
This,
this
you
is
got 20.
this is 19.
No, it's 20. Well, to 20. See on top?
Oh, yes. I just have another document in front of it and I wasn't seeing
Oh,
it.
okay. Yeah.
I had another one. Okay. There we go. So, I think it is interesting. Oh, here. That we landed on today for a second meeting, the last day of Lab 20. I don't know for you guys, but Lab 20 for me was spectacular. Truly, if I want to compare it to like Lab 18, for example, which was like trying to keep my head afloat and like not dying, Lab 20 for me was I was more like coming back to myself in a way. How did you guys feel in this Lab 20? Recreation based on an update based on the ability to receive signals from the entorno, codify them.
I had the same, Denise, like you, the Lab 18. I was so glad that you were saying that because, you know, sometimes it's so, we talked about it yesterday evening with David, sometimes it's so alone. And what I noticed, you get more the feeling with the logic. So it's getting more alive. So like this week, no, except, you know, nearly every evening I had a meeting with you and David. So in Lab 18, I changed my whole company, and suddenly it was there and it working very good. And now in Lab 20, it's more relaxed. It's more relaxed.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I don't know, David, how it for Jeff, sorry, how it was for you.
I have to split it because the elections here were just so loud leading up to it.
I want to hear your takes on that, Jeff. Tell
Sure.
us.
That's true.
Well, so what I noticed, you know, in fact, I was kind of picking it up. What I did actually, I'll show you my calendaria, is that
Mhm.
circled this back at the beginning of the year. So it
Okay.
just seemed like this target because I'm, you know, beyond the election, I felt like there's been like this was a world decision point,
Mhm.
world choice.
It was very global, yes,
Yes.
definitely.
And so I think the pressures getting up to that circle, as I was, you know, it was a little intense up until the 4th. So the day before the election is what I found. But it was just all consuming here. Just I had no idea what, you know, unless I really looked for it, I had no idea what was going on anywhere.
Mhm.
And then it seemed like the day before there was like a release because like there was nothing more for people to do other than show up.
Mhm.
And then I would say, you know, that night, by the next morning after it was called, everything just shifted. I mean, there's all kinds of reactions. So I'm still trying to marry it with, you know, with the Lab 20, and there was some things from yesterday. I don't have them clear yet, but I think the idea is that it was a release, right? Regardless, now you see people, it has to do, I think, with that maturing, is that the whole thing, the whole drama of it was incredibly immature.
Mhm.
And now there's wake up of some kind. I mean, first shock, and I think people are still coming out of that. But you know, whichever side one landed on, the reactions are different. But I think all of it is is a call now for a maturity, to grow a maturity.
Mhm.
Whether people do it or not will be an individual choice. But that's what it seems like. We've been in this very, very extremely immature engagement for years, if not, it depends where you want to start the clock, how
Yeah.
many years. And my sense is whatever that immaturity is, it's not going to go on into the future. It's either things are going to get more, and I'm noticing, more of the interference. So some are more open to the interference. Again, not political side. It's in a way the emotional reactions that I think is leaving the opening versus more, I think, in the center where they may not have the language, but just certainly to rethink. It just calls for something different. I'm not sure people have the language, but I see it as, okay, game over. Or what I tell people in society, I said, look, there was a war. And, I identify more with the Democrats. I said, there was a war. We lost. That's it. Grieve it and move on. And and I think that's what's going on, is people processing it, but some want to fight, some would want to give up. But that center I find really interesting, because it's almost like, that eye of the storm. There's almost a thank God it's over, however it ended.
Yeah. It was definitely mass media, like global. It was like a really huge media production.
Yes.
And yeah, I followed it quite closely
Mhm.
because it was all over my social media. And actually, I found it quite interesting and very educating. I followed it very closely.
Yeah.
And I found several characters like that I find they lean towards Trump, but irregardless of that, I found those people very educated, very neutral, looking at things very objectively, very cold perspective. And then other people very emotional, like you said, just all kinds of things, right? But I just thought that it was very, very educational, very interesting to see, to follow. And of course, I'm not a US citizen, so I of course, looking at it from the outside is very different than living it, because I, for example, lived the past elections of Mexico, and it is very different to live it from
Yeah.
the inside of your country. But like, I don't know why, but like Mexican politics just seem so boring to me. They seem like how can I
They're
they
very
just
corrupt,
like boring.
Denise.
Just
Very
boring.
corrupt in Mexico.
Sorry?
They're very corrupt as well in Mexico, with the selections and the mayors and,
The thing in Mexico,
all the
I
rich
mean, I'm
family,
sure
they all,
we have it everywhere, but like
yeah.
it's a joke. It's
I
honestly.
think that's the momentum here. It's that, we've known it's been going on for years, but the extent of it and how much it's overt now is very different.
When it's over, right? And I felt that like right after the election
Yeah,
was
I had
over,
the same.
I felt a completely different light.
Me too,
So
before
weird.
and after.
So weird, yeah.
I
It's
was
like
very
depressed
busy with
again.
the elections, and even the night before, I had the same with you, Jeff. It was okay. Now it's okay, but I heard that the son of Kennedy is gonna be the leader of the health, and they want to go back as well as more nature health. I think that's positive. So it's not only negative. There is also a positive side.
I would be careful at this stage to view anything as positive and negative, because I don't think
Yeah.
anyone really knows. The language is
Oh,
very distorted.
that's
There's
They
so
would say
many.
anything before the elections. They say anything to get
Yeah,
the vote.
but even now, there's, I see where there could be power plays. I don't I think at this point, just kind of being open to what reveals is probably the best posture. I can't nail anything down. I really don't believe anyone. And it's kind of wait, show me.
Is it, Denise, to be the practice for me is to be neutral.
Neutral, objective, dissociate the experience, just exercise our objective observer, learn to observe, which is, we're talking about hard when you're living inside the thing. It's really hard to do, but it's a good moment to exercise that part of objectivity.
Yeah,
Just
for
the
me,
part, I would separate, if you don't mind, I would separate that position, just looking at the politics side, is that I don't believe yet what is said. So say natural, I'm not convinced that that's truly the position, right? Because there's so much money and other
It is
things
quite
going.
that I think that's a quite neutral position.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah,
because
that's what I'm saying.
I
Right.
mean,
me
oh,
as an antenna, Jeff, for me as an antenna, because I
Mhm.
said positive and negative, and then I was thinking, oh, yeah, there was a little bit this morning. Oh, yeah, more natural health. Oh, and on the other side, the abortion. That's that's
Yeah.
not a good thing. That. So, but I have to digest all those
it's
things
so
in
distorted,
myself.
so distorted.
Yeah, I think the point being is for myself, it's now clarity in self, because don't believe either any sides. There's so much money, so much corruption, so much and the media isn't part of it, and you just don't know. So it's like, okay, where can I tune in on the on the re-axis? Because I don't, I mean, I have trouble believing that this is all bad or that's all good and all that. It's just, I kind of go with something practical. What's the right tool for the job? If I had a broken leg, got in a car accident, I'm thrilled that Western medicine is there.
Yes, of course, you're
Yeah.
right. But
Yeah.
not only the pharmacy and the money, etc. But we will see. We will see.
Yeah. So I
But
guess
like
it
the
just,
I
thing is,
hope.
yeah.
we need to lower our expectations. That's the
Yeah.
thing, because
Of course, I hope that
like
the word.
coming from a LGC background, our expectations tend to be really high, and our level of frustration is also very high when we go out into society and we're like, oh my God, like this isn't moving, we're not improving, like there's it's so like the level, I understand, like that level of frustration and that level of I forgot the word, but yeah, I mean, coming from LGC, that's gonna be really difficult to get through, because you have a different type of observer and you're looking at things from a different place.
Yeah.
So but the important thing is that, like you were saying, Jeff, it's same re-axis, but what we're working with has to do with the solar consciousness, and in that instance the social and the solar are parallel to each other. They're different instances of the same axis, right? They run parallel to each other. So what we're doing in the solar and the code executing and the solar consciousness trying to not break the entorno while doing this transition. I mean, that's everything that's going on. But I do think that one of the we could say good things that is happening is that the level of transparency is more. Because, for example, I was following the whole campaign on TikTok. And on TikTok, people are just transparent, open, like they speak their minds and all. And for me, I don't know, I never saw that before.
Yeah.
And that's something that I really like listening to the US people, that they execute very well their freedom of expression, and they communicate really well, and they don't care, like they don't have any they're not ashamed to say what they feel, think, they do, so I feel like from that perspective it was very transparent, and things are very like they're all out in the open for everybody that wants to see. I mean, it is complex, but things are more out in the open.
Yeah.
And it was
The one-
very new, Jeff, that they were so open. It was this year, in the former selection, it was not that clear like
Wasn't, right?
now.
Mhm.
Yeah,
And
the
TikTok,
corruption
I think
was
it's a
more-
big part.
Yeah, the corruption was more clear, particularly, yeah. But the one thing I'm finding in my biology showing up, and this, and if I were to best guess like a common thread when I talk to people, whether they don't have the language for it, but I think it's a time people want to build resilience, maybe some flexibility, but resilience. So the idea is we don't know, it's a big unknown now. And the idea is how prepared is one. And I'm not talking about, prepping for, nuclear war or anything like that. It's more of a how fit are you? People starting to talk emotionally fit, physically fit, but also with finance, there's a lot of unknown, jobs. And I would kind of say, certainly in myself, it's showing up. In fact, we've had conversations like, okay, what's a good level of resilience? Because we're going into something very, very new.
Mhm.
What can happen and are we
That's the
ready?
thing. I think that's the thing that I think that's you hit the point. That uncertainty, the level of uncertainty is very, very high because the things that are going on, like people are trying to explain themselves what's going on, right? Because actually what's going on is that we don't know what's going to happen in the future. So resiliency and the capacity, building the capacity,
Mhm.
to not know what's going to happen next.
Yep.
Uncertainty. And
Mhm.
I think we're all living that in a way, like globally, even like whether we are conscious of it or not, we're trying to, grab on, like it's like the Titanic is sinking and we're like out in the open and we're just trying to grab whatever's out in the water to grab onto, but really there's not a lot to grab onto but myself, like my ability to swim. That's all I have. And to resist the cold and, to resist the hunger, whatever.
Mhm.
So it is just the transition. It's the end of an apparatus. And what I think, if we look at it from a little bit more far away, 47th president, and he's gonna be in the charge for 4 years, like beginning the first year of the next apparatus. I mean, it is a lot. It is a big responsibility. So what I like, the thought I had when Trump won, I was like, Trump needs to show up for everyone and not just for the ones that voted for him. He needs to show up for everybody, for all the people that are disappointed, for all the people that think, hell of him. He needs to show up and show up for everybody. That's what I thought, because he's not the president of everyone, not
Yeah.
just the ones that voted for him.
What's interesting with that, I mean, I don't think that's in his character personally, but what's interesting is that the Republicans got the Senate and the House as well. So it was like it's been this big movement for almost 10 years. And it's like, okay, now you have it. Now show up. You have
Exactly.
to do it.
Show up. See, but it's not that, like, independently if it's in his character or not. I'm talking more about the role. Like,
Okay.
the demand of the role is that he needs to be up to that. He needs to, like, so we'll see what he learns. Maybe he'll learn something. And all of us will learn too from that.
Yes.
Okay, let's end it because we're gonna be talking about politics for
Yeah.
all of the meeting. But yeah, I was asking all of my
Nevertheless, well, just to
American
finish the
friends
thought,
about it.
after that, it's really been more of an internal, which is really interesting.
Yes.
And it just shifted like that. Like more is better that it's just over regardless of the outcome.
Okay, yeah.
And then it shifted.
It's very
to-
turbulent, yeah,
Yeah.
inwards.
And it's very interesting because Trump had this 297 points, like Israel,
297 point? What do you mean?
with the counting. That's
The volts, you mean?
the votes.
Oh, I didn't see that.
Oh,
Yeah,
oh, the electoral
297.
college. The electoral college. I'm not sure
Yeah.
where that ended.
I don't know how it ended, but the when he won, the day when he won, it was 297. So the whole day it was 297, like
Mm.
Israel, like the V.
Mm. Mhm. Yeah.
312 is what he ended with.
Yeah,
Okay.
that was okay. That's now. Yeah,
Yeah.
Mm.
312.
wow, that's communication.
Mm.
Right. Interesting. You know, it's all in the concrete, which is interesting.
Yeah. So let's just locate ourselves in Calendaria. Today is contexto, last day of Lab 2024. We're very close to the end of the apparatus. 46 days until the year is over. By now, it is very important that we begin to prepare our antennas, our processor, our psychic structures, our concepts, everything to enter the ring of fire. Try to enter the ring, like this is what I can say from where I am right now and what I always try to do. Just enter the ring of fire in the best way possible, whatever that means for each one of us. Not get distracted or seduced by external influences or entertainment or whatever there's going to be out there. Just try to focus on our own axis because it's a very important time, especially because it is a ring of fire of a leap year, of an end of an apparatus. We're going to begin a new apparatus in 47 days. So I think that is quite important, even if we are not able to grasp the totality of the concept or the totality of what that means. Just prepare our receiver, you know, to be as aware, as conscious, and as in access as we can possibly be, right? Tomorrow we begin Lab 21. Alejandra talks about recreation of base 21, a concept that, you know, we've been discussing quite a lot, but for me it's still quite abstract. But I do think it has to do with a connection or communication between third orbital and sun, right? Which is 1 and 2 in the middle of 3 and the sun. Third orbital, 2, 1, right? Our base 21. And then we have the last 2 laps of the year, and then we enter into the ring of fire, right? So 15 of November, solar day today is 739207. We have 77, and then we have 39 and 20. An update of the recreation, and then inside 77, that's what we have in the solar day. That's very interesting. See here? And also in the wheat marker, we have 58256. That's also, I find it interesting because the wheat has to do with an interconnectivity of our planetary communication, right? It also has to do with the beginning of our planetary civilization. It has to do with interconnection, global interconnection. So when we see 58, 256, remember 256 is related to the programmer. So we have 58, which is mind, 256, programmer, and the wheat. So this is a global reference, okay? And when we're talking about solar day, we're talking about a solar reference. They're different scales. Wheat is a reference that has to do with the third orbital. Solar day is another hierarchy. We're talking about solar consciousness there, okay? So just to locate ourselves here, and we can begin with our questions. Did you guys send any? I didn't. Yeah, okay. Do we only have Nienkes?
When you go more up, they
Oh,
send.
here we go. Marjolaine. Here. No, but we already saw that one. Oh, yes, I found Jeff's. Okay. Example of meaning creation as it's defined in LGC. Creation, 1 0. Do you mean related to that? The 1 0 creation?
No, no, it would, just the way it showed, meaning creation. So Alejandra says, to create meaning, right?
Oh.
So, right. So, yeah, just phrasing it that way. So, I can make up meanings for anything, but what is it specifically in LGC?
Well, of course, creation of meaning, yeah, it can be created in relation to whatever references I have. If my references are only of an anatomic instance, then the references I'm going to have to create those meanings are going to have to do with the past, sacred scriptures, previous teachers, Jesus, the Bible, whatever religion, all these kinds of things. I'm going to be creating meaning based on that if my identity is encapsulated in the anatomic. But in our case, we have been educated, we're being educated and informed in solar concepts. We are constructing solar concepts, and we are being a part of this transition that the solar consciousness is going through, right? We are kind of like, we're a part of it, and we are participating actively in it with our consciousness and with our reasoning. So in our case, creation of meaning will be in direct relation to the construction of our concepts, because our concepts are going to be our references, right? So depending on the quality of our individual conceptual basis, then based on that, we're going to be able to create meaning, make meaning of things, make sense of things. And I think we do that all the time, like in little actions in our domestic lives all the time. I'm sure you guys do. Like whatever happens like in front of my eyes, since I already have that constructed conceptual base, and it's quite robust. We've been doing this for quite a while, for years. That when a concept needs a whole year to actually become more consolidated. So we have several years in our basis. We have several years for our concepts to mature. So maybe we don't even realize it, but we are constructing meaning all the time just by observing things with our consciousness and stepping on that conceptual base that we've been constructed. But these concepts are going to be the references through which we're going to be creating new meaning, because they're affecting our consciousness. They're affecting our perception.
Right. So as is being used here, just want to make sure I heard it correctly. The meaning creation in the LGC would be born out of solar native code references.
In LGC, yes. In an LGC context, yes.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Distinct from symbolic references, which would be more generalized meaning making.
Yes, symbolic licenses are gonna have to do with, the creation of symbolic meaning, right? They're gonna be what's that word? Volatile.
Okay.
They're going to be volatile. They're going to be speculative. And I'm probably going to be creating those meanings based on my reactives, my documentation, and whatever the matrix, whatever the container in the social consciousness provides for me, because I don't have a particular connection outside of from outside the box. I don't have that. So that's all I have. And if that's all I have, then I need to create meaning with whatever I have. And that's, what whoever's doing that, they have the license for that. The thing is that there's a lot of people probably killing themselves, having accidents, you know, losing meaning of life, or a lot of addictions, like a lot of things where the creations of meaning that the references from the Matrix provides are just not enough anymore. Because the time right now, it's so demanding that like internally we're probably resonating with something, but we're not actually creating. We don't that link from outside the box. So it is like I'm missing something, I'm missing something, I'm missing something. And I don't know how to construct it either, because maybe, I don't know, particular configurations of, we all have different particular configurations, reaches, scopes, you know, appetites, whatever. Or contracts. Maybe the reason that I was born, the reason like what I packed it before I was born was something different. Then I find myself out here and I don't have the resources to construct what I need to continue to support my own life inside this entorno. So many different things are going on out there. But for us, that we're being formed in this, through this instruction, then our conceptual base is going to be affecting our perception, or our construction of concepts, our construction of meaning, and it's going to be affecting our consciousness. And I think it's something that we are naturalizing by now. I don't know if you guys feel it, but like for me, it's naturalized, and slowly I've been reinserting myself in society and trying to blend in a little bit, because before I couldn't do that. So there's something interesting, and I wanted to tell you guys about this, that Alejandra shared in relation to Manifiesto. I don't know if she shared it in any of the red programs, but she talked about the 14th of December of 2024. Okay, that day, the wheat reference is 58285. 58285. Remember flight 828 from Manifiesto is where the passengers get lost, etc., right? So
Wait,
Alejandra said,
That was I'm sorry, where did that come from? That was
14th of December.
right. No, but the flight.
Flight 828, Manifiesto, the series. Did you guys watch the series?
Oh, yes. Wow.
Yes. Okay.
Right.
So
So
Ali has been talking about Manifiesto, I don't know,
didn't
for a while.
realize that. Yeah.
And she's been, trying to explain to us, and I was like, it was hard for me to actually like grasp, like a little bit. I could understand what it had to do with us as a community, like the LGC community, because she explains and describes how directly it explains the LGC community, that series. So like she would talk about it all the time, and it wasn't until she named this metric 58285 from the wheat, right? And she said that would be for us the death date that it was for the passengers of the plane in Manifiesto. Like the equivalent, because the death date was in June, I think, 2024 for the series. But for us in real life, that date is the 14th of December, which is where we're gonna be reinserting ourselves in the real time of Earth. Because what they did in Manifiesto, let me see if I can get this right. I can explain it right. What happened in Manifiesto was that they got lost in a telluric ray in the plane, right? So, and they didn't die. Their doubles were like, no, you can't die, right? So there was a parallel timeline created to reconfigure certain things in the re-axis of every passenger. And the death date had to do with the reinsertion of the passengers into the real time of Earth. For us, that is the 14th of December. When she explained that, I was like, that's when it clicked. I was like, oh. Then she keeps talking about how we're going to be reinserting ourselves in the 507 apparatus as arreglarios.
What is that word?
Arreglario, to fix things. Remember that concept she created in Panama in Event 57. There was a story. Remember that? Do you guys know that story? It's a very important story. Because if you guys don't know it, we should schedule it so we can talk about it. You guys don't know it?
You know it.
Okay, we're gonna talk about it then. I'm gonna put it in my to-do list. So in Event 57 in Panama, Alejandra presented a story. She wrote a story, okay? And in the story, there was this character named Arreglario. Arreglar in Spanish means to fix something. The one that fixes something, that's his name. Its name. It's an it. It's a something. It's not a who, it's an it, right? So 507, it's the next apparatus. So we're gonna be, this is what Sun has been attempting to do by us resonating with the instruction, we're gonna be reinserting ourselves into the flow as arreglarios. I don't know if I clarified what I am, because for me it makes sense in the back, but just trying to say it, I don't know if it makes sense to you guys.
You could say it again.
No, I can't.
Oh, okay.
Oh, I understand. I
I
understand.
get it. I get the flavor.
Yeah, the flavor's good. Getting the flavor's good.
The flavor.
Yeah. And then
Now I'm very curious about the story. Because Panama is 507 and Costa Rica is 506, eh, Denise? Yes,
Yes.
okay.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Because
Okay.
506, and for some reason, I landed here on the last day of apparatus 506, me and Francisco. And Francisco's the only one from Costa Rica in the group in the 7-11. So it has been very like structurally very synchronized, but in the content very turbulent. That's how I can describe it, because the whole process from when we began to like make decisions and prepare and plan and everything, the synchronicity, beautiful, like the process, everything perfectly synchronized. But once we got here, it was just like turbulent, like a lot of biologization. I was depressed for so many months,
Wow.
just a lot. But I mean, we're here for the last year of apparatus 506. There must be a reason. Quality in the antennas.
Sorry, jumping back, what date from Manifest, from the show, what was the date of their disappearance?
I think it was 24th of June.
20 June.
No,
Oh,
the disappearance was on 2013. Or we can double check. Because I
yeah, I
don't
guess. it-
remember of it. Dates. Manifiesto. Okay. Fandom. Development. Yeah, we're gonna have to look at it. Like, go back because I don't have the exact. I don't have the exact dates. But I do remember it was in June.
It was June, okay. Just kind of free associating, but you mentioned, Panama 507, when I think of Panama, I think the canal. So it's just going to the opening date of the canal. Is it,
Okay, yeah, we could look at that. At that relationship. But yeah, so I wanted to share that with you guys because I thought it was really interesting and it really clicked with me when she said, like, and when we saw that 58285 in the wheat.
Yep.
Wow. So flight 828 and then 8 when she explained 828 and yeah, it's a lot. But yeah, I thought it was important to share.
Yep.
Okay. So is that good for your first question, Jeff?
Yes, yes.
Okay. The second question is, can you explain the relationship between the RI and the mute zone? Well, I don't know if I can explain the relationship, but we can like try to describe each one individually. Mute zone is always described that when Alejandra describes the mute zone, she always explains it in contrast with the Broca and Wernicke. Remember that? The mute zone is like Wernicke area of the sun, the brain that doesn't have language, right? And the Broca is the area that manages and you know does all the work that has to do with language. So the mute zone has to do with an aspect of ourselves that is that's precarious, that has been there all the time, right? We just haven't been able to describe it as such, as like it's a paradox to say, I'm gonna describe the mute zone, right? It's a paradox, but you know, the re-axis paradoxes exist because there are several levels, multi-levels in the same axis. Mute zone is also related to the reception of signals. Signals in their pure state are going to be mute because they're not going to be codified, right? When we're talking about unprecedented signals, of course, because when we're talking about just regular signals, most of them are going to be codified, which can take us back to your question about the symbolic, right? We can differentiate it because a symbolic interpretation will always be codified when a signal, unprecedented signal, will not be codified. And for us, we are receiving the instruction through Ale, and of course she's codifying it, but we are resonating internally from our mute zone with what she's describing. If we weren't resonating internally from our mute zone with what she's describing, we wouldn't find, like, we would say she was crazy. We wouldn't have the sensation or the radar or the scan of the meaning behind it, right? Because when we receive it, we are creating the meaning. When we're reasoning, we are creating the meaning of what we are receiving and reasoning, right? If we didn't have that resonance, we would hear it, we wouldn't be able to make any sense of it, right? Because we wouldn't have the resonance with the instruction itself. Okay, so that like the mute zone is related to the area of reception of signals, generally mute when they're unprecedented. Then we have to decodify them. Now, probably in the future, if we evolve, if we improve in our processing of signals, we're going to be able to codify those signals at better, like codified in a better quality, right? Because right now, what we are learning to do, we are learning to connect, reconnect, and comprehend and construct concepts that have to do with the subatomic instance. So in the future, if these concepts mature and if we evolve and if we improve constantly, the codification of the reception of those signals is going to improve too, right? But for now, like most of the signals we receive, of course, some of them we're going to be describing them with whatever resources we have, right? With whatever concepts we have constructed. Or even if we need to take from the outside, like from the matrix, we need to take a resource from there to decode something so that I can contain myself and calm myself down, maybe I can do that. But for example, in my case, if I am receiving a signal and I can't describe it, I don't know what it is, I try to linger in the void. I don't look for anything external to decode it, to explain it, to describe it. I linger in the void. I linger in the muteness of it. Because if it's unprecedented, I want to keep it pure, right? Just receive it. My body will know what to do with it, and then Earth will know what to do with it, and then it'll come back up, and maybe I'll understand it. But not everything has to do with me, right? So we receive all kinds of things that not necessarily have to do with us. And that's the mute zone. We receive it in the mute zone. An analogy to explain the mute zone is like when you need to pee you just get up and you go pee. You don't have to tell your body this, like, you don't have to be vocal and be like, oh, body, get up, body, you need to loosen your bladder. You need to, no, it's mute. It's a mute signal, right? That we interpret because we know and understand, but it's a mute zone that are a mute signal that our bodies issue, right? That's like like an anatomic example of what a mute signal would be, right? We put words to it to describe it to ourselves, to each other, but its origin is mute. Does that make sense?
Yes. Just trying to, I see that the re is different. I'm just,
Because the re axis is the y axis, is the
Yes.
the 0 time. It's the real time axis, the one that's connected to everything and nothing at the same time.
Yep.
Right? And the re axis has different levels, different dimensions, and every dimension has a different logic, and they all coexist.
Yes.
Which is why we ourselves are multi-dimensional beings, because we are made of different dimensions. The thing is that this instruction is trying to help us understand the logic, that there's a different logic each of those instances have. Like the logic of the subatomic is not the same logic as the anatomic, but they coexist in the same re-axis. And I have access to all of those from my re-axis.
So the process of in the mute zone is on the rho axis, because that takes place in time.
The process of description, yes. Like if you want to describe and codify the signal, it's gonna happen in rho. We're gonna need rho. We're gonna need a process. We're gonna need a sequence. We're gonna need another person, or maybe just myself to explain it to myself, right? But I'm gonna need time, linear time for that. Yeah.
Yeah. So I see how actually they're not related in a way, right? It's distinct items. Yep.
I would say that the mute zone is part, yeah, it's part of the re-axis. Yeah, it is part of it. The thing
Okay.
is that the re-axis is like so many things. There's like, it is so many things. It involves so many things. So we could say that mute zone is a part of, like, it's a part of the re.
Okay. So I mean that, because then as we codify it, so that almost suggests like the Z axis, right? That it goes back, it flips between the two.
The Z axis, it was Y, the X is related to rho, and the C
Yep.
is the one that has to do with depth,
Yeah.
right? So like, and also the Z axis, Ali relates it to like being anchored. So
Okay.
if I am anchored, like if my Y axis, my re axis is not connected to or able to make updates, right? It is still, my re axis is still. So what's gonna happen is that my my document is gonna measure always the same, right? So I'm gonna have a date of birth and a date of death. And it's not gonna be, there's not gonna be any capacity to update anything. I'm gonna be born and die the same way.
Mhm.
That is like with a blocked re-axis without any capacity to upgrade or update anything. But if my re-axis is updating, connecting, or we, like in our case, we are at least recovering that connection, then we are affecting our document, right? So it's gonna vary. It doesn't mean we're gonna be eternal, but it's not gonna be as fixed as it would be, right? Now, if the re-axis is fixed, like the one in the cross doing this, in re, then that's gonna, my Z axis is gonna be anchored in one point.
Mhm.
Not gonna be able to move it anywhere. So my depth is gonna be whatever it is, whatever it was when I was born. I'm not gonna be able to move at all. I'm gonna be anchored.
Flat depth.
Depth.
Okay.
Yeah. She also relates the Z axis to information in relation to the clan. she has also related to that, but it's different scales. The first one, I think it's a more, it's a reading that has to do more with the entorno. The second one has to do more with the clan. But they all relate to this explanation or description of the Z-axis. So, yeah,
Okay,
is that better?
yes, thank you.
Okay. Do you have questions, Marjolaine? I'll just go to Nienkes.
No, I have seen our meeting and I wrote everything down, and for me, everything was clear or understanding better in the moment.
Mhm.
So I had no questions, and I was thinking it's for Molly and Jeff this meeting.
Okay. No, I'm glad you're here too. Your microphone is muted, Molly.
I didn't really say anything. It's
Oh.
Jeff's meeting.
Jeff and Molly's meeting. No, it's now everybody's meeting because everyone's here.
Yes.
But yeah, we had two in this lab. Mm. So okay, I'm gonna go to Nienkes.
And
The-
Denise, as
Yeah.
well, last night there was an addition for me that more became clear as well. So it was the point on the E we say in Dutch. I don't know if you have this expression in English.
Mhm.
But for our meeting we had, I wrote everything down and was digesting, and it was a very nice, good meeting, and everything was clear for me. When
When we slow it down, right?
very, very nice.
Yeah, when we slow it down, we're able to see more detail, put the magnifying glass, like stop, and because sometimes in the meetings things go too fast and you're like, okay. Sometimes it's better to go slowly and, allow the delay of the body to absorb it, because our minds are usually faster. Our minds and our bodies need also that time so that the information fits in.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's good.
And
Okay.
maybe, Denise, if there is some time, and when I'm listening, then the nativo and the nasivo is very clear when I'm listening. But if there is some time today, maybe you can add
Yeah.
some extra things about this, because I feel it's important, and I wrote everything down. It's clear, but still, it's in my Wernick
Okay,
brain.
yeah, we can go over it again.
Yes.
All right, so next notes from Nienke. These are abilities of the processor. When the processor evolves, it protects the content better from the personal life because the anticipation resources are extremely increased. Anticipation resources are extremely increased. But why is this? Because there is a dissociation of the experimental charge. When the digital aspect is trained, it respects the logic of contents and containers. And when it's not, it does the complete opposite thing. Dissociation, experimental charge. Okay, so she's talking about the evolution of the processor. I mean, we're barely realizing we have a processor, and now she's talking about the evolution of the processor. Okay. But so it says it protects the content better from the personal life because anticipation resources are extremely increased. The thing is that, and this connects directly with Jeff's question in the reception of signals thing. We are receiving signals all the time, constantly, all the time, right? The thing is that we have been interpreting those signals wrongly or mystically or symbolically or with our ancestral information references. With whatever references we have at hand, we describe or we interpret those signals. The thing is that the signals that are here now, that are coming now, and the potentials of the ionosphere and the state of the evolution of the solar consciousness and the task of the solar consciousness and all, that's changing the game, right? Because to receive those instructions, those signals, we need to have a conceptual base that helps us receive them. Because, you know, if we don't buffer that with our conceptual base, these influences would probably destroy us, because they are of a high, like the stakes are high, the potentials are high, the demands are high, the challenge, like the moment is very challenging in space temporal terms for the sun, for the solar consciousness. And since we are like resonating with that, we are aware of becoming aware of what's going on in the solar consciousness, what solar sun is going through, then that takes us to, okay, we fractalize that, our own personal, like individual processor of signals, right? So if we know, okay, first we know we have a processor. Okay, what does the processor do? It processes signals, mute signals, right? We're talking about learning to process signals in their pure state without interpreting them. Just receive them, allowing the processor to do what it needs to do, which is organize them, put them wherever they need to be or go or belong, right? Then later, because in the anatomic, that's all we can do, right? The only thing we can do from the anatomic is use our consciousness, our observer, and our reasoning. So all of that infrastructure that we're learning about, we're just learning about how it works. It doesn't mean that we ourselves do it, right? But we can learn to administrate our processor, right? 353. We can learn to administrate our processor. We can learn to process the signals. But we all, like, how do we do this? With our reasoning, with our consciousness, right? Neutralizing whatever other influences or my reactives, the reactives that turn on in me or in my biology, that are quick or automatic that want to interpret those signals quickly. So that's why she says, the anticipation resources are extremely increased because of our conceptual basis. We have resources that are helping us be connected with the entorno. We are including issues or things or situations that don't have to do with us. They have to do with the entorno. We're including them. We have an appetite to understand them. We are including them in our own lives. So that's like that in other aspects of ourselves, that's going to provide us with anticipation resources. So our unfolded is going to be anticipated because we are in that flow, in that, you know, we are exercising these things, we are improving in our capacity to link, we're improving in our consciousness, we are slowly moving forward, you know, we're expanding, all of these things. That provides us anticipation because we're connecting with the entorno, right? We're including notions from the entorno in our internal re. And that generates more connectivity, that generates more anticipation. So dissociation of the experimental charge, what this does, I think, it's that it helps the processor process signals so that we don't become the interference of those signals that don't all have to do with us. We're receiving all kinds of things like the sun. Sun is receiving signals from the universe all over. The thing is that he has to manage that. He has to filter that. He has to see what comes in, what doesn't. He has to codify it. He has to create a local reality. He has to create meaning. He has to create interaction, administrate like all the orbitals and all of that, right? So we can help from our third orbital perspective. We can help receive those things and just allow Earth to do what it needs to do. And then once it's all organized, we're going to be looking at our work through the synchronization in our lives. In little things. Like the other day, I was reading a story about a group of Indian men that their village was dying in the drought. They were running out of food, water, all right. And there was this man, he was in the 70s. He picked up a signal and he started observing and he figured out how to infiltrate soil and rehydrate the landscape, put more water into the aquifers, make natural agriculture, right? In a very dry zone. And he created an oasis and his village is thriving. I was reading that story. And I usually listen to music just calm music that helps me concentrate when I'm reading. And I never listen to the music. An Indian song came on when I was reading that. I know this is like really stupid. And it only makes sense to me because I was connecting so hard with this person, and then this Indian sound synchronizes with what I'm reading. What? Like, why? So it made me cry because I was touched by the story, and then that sound from a distant land that connects me to a distant land comes into my ear. I mean, those are like little things where I find connection. You know? It's mute. I'm not interpreting anything. It's just something that clicked, right? But that's just an example, right? But when we're talking about reception of signals, mute zone, processing, it's all mute. That's another level. That's another level. What I just said, it's an execution of when everything else happened, and that is like the last link. When there's synchronization, is the last link. It's like the cherry on top, the eye on the dot on the I. When all that infrastructure, and then it fits into a very detailed and subtle detail. And why did it make me cry? Because I understand what's behind everything that needs to happen for something so small to synchronize. You know? I don't know if that makes sense. Yeah. So, when the digital aspect is strained, it respects the logic of contents and containers. When the digital aspect is strained, I think what she means by that is when we are properly separating and describing and knowing the difference between our analogic aspect and our digital aspect. Our digital aspect is oriented, or the digital aspect, because the digital aspect is not always necessarily related to us. It's the digital aspect and we can apply it to whatever, right? But if we're talking about us, our digital aspect is result oriented. Anatomic is process oriented. So a trained digital knows that there's another aspect of itself in another instance that has another logic, that has another structure, and that is process oriented, right? And the one that is living in the anatomic is usually more focused on the contents. But in other levels, the focus is not on the contents. It's on the structure that allows the contents to exist. That's what a trained digital aspect would be. Knowing the difference, separating, understanding the different instances, and exercising it. Because since our true nature is imaginary and instantaneous and non-material, then when we unfold into a material, it is really hard for us to understand that we can't have things now. Like our digital aspect is like the instant. Everything happens in an instant, the result, right? So if we don't work on those concepts, then our digital aspect is going to be dragging our analogic. We're going to be hurting our biologies because our analogic needs time. It's always about processes. Like the reasons why our bodies are alive is because there are many different processes active all at once happening. So processes all the time. That's analogic. And then the digital aspect, it's sort of like the guide, we could say, that connects to the possible results of those processes, right? So a mature digital instance has to do with that. Learning, working on the construction of the concept of differentiating and comprehending, and just the role each one of them has in our multidimensional nature. Is that better, Nienke? About the
Yes,
experimental
and the connection with the experimental charge. that is now she talks about that more, and I'm like, okay, yes, is that also connected to the reactives we have? That's why when there are reactives, we feel the experimental charge more than when we don't have the reactives and more the story you're telling.
So I think the experimental charge, she's been talking about that since day one, I think. Like, do not use your associative memory. Do not try to interpret this with, your past references, etc. Now that same thing, I think she's now naming it experimental charge. And the thing is that the experience has to do with the content and not with the container. So if we are receiving signals that have to do with an instruction that has to do with the container, then we don't need the experimental charge. We don't need that because the only one that needs the experimental charge is the Solariano. But since we are absorbing solar notions, then we don't need the experimental charge because the solar instance is not a person. It's not experience focused. It's container focused. The solar consciousness is focused on constructing the containers that allow experiences to be. So it doesn't focus on the experience, it focuses on the structure. So if the structure, the codification of the structure works well, then the experiences are going to work better, right? But us, since we are in here having an experience, but if we want to learn, she is naming this specifically in relation to the construction of a solar consciousness, the solar aspect of ourselves. The solar aspect of ourselves, the experimental charge it's not going to help it. And I think it's what we were talking about in the last meeting. We're not human there. We're not a human. We're part of the solar consciousness, little particles. And yeah, I know it's hard for us to get from over here, from the anatomic and from the human experience. But it doesn't mean that the experience is unworthy or it's not valuable. No, because the experience, it's what's most valuable, of course, the material experience. It's just that in our case, what we are learning is, and has to do with notions of the structure. And the structure is a structure. It's not the one experiencing the experience, it's the one containing the experience. So the separation between that, it's gonna need us to learn to dissociate the experience and dissociate and associated when we need it to be, right? I don't know if it happens to any of you, but like when you get dissociate, like naturally you just like drift away. Like you're in a room of people and you're like, you just dissociate. I think that's a good example of dissociating from the experience. It is like another aspect of ourselves becomes active and it leaves the unfolded in like automatic. That could be an example, maybe a practical example of a dissociation, but it doesn't like it's never good to be completely dissociated all the time or completely tied to the experience all the time. Not being able to move or have that flexibility from one or the other, because we need to learn to do that, where we need to shift our focus from different areas to do different things. We're learning to do that. But why? Because in our case, we are going to be contents and we're going to be working with we're going to be containers too. Like we're going to have that double role or characteristic if we do this well, if we succeed at this endeavor. And, we're going to have qualities of both. So, okay, I'm the container, but I'm also the content. Does that ring the bell? Yeah. That's a good one. And she's been describing it as experimental charge very recently, but I do think she's been talking about that for a while now. She's just like, the thing is that the concepts are evolving, but we can see how like in the basis of them, she has been talking about the same things from day one. Okay, next question about censorship. If the argument goes something like, because I know that if this content takes this signal, it would hurt him, I will not show it. I censor the antenna so that they don't get hurt, which means that this is from the 5th stage, right? I censor the antenna so that they don't get hurt, which means that the digital aspect fits into the symbolic charge, and the container role is lost, provides no assistance because it lost its objectivity. Okay, so I think she is talking about 2 instances of the same reaxis, okay? So one instance of the reaxis we could, I don't know, I don't know if it's the double precisely, but let's say it is. The double is trying to tell or communicate with the unfolded in relation to something new that the unfolded needs to integrate, right? To be more anticipated in the experience, or to be more prepared, or to have more notions of the structure, whatever, it could be whatever. But since the unfolded, the references of the unfolded or the identity of the unfolded is either symbolic or very analogic or very religious, or an identity that is tied to a belief system or to the anatomic. And there is another instance of itself trying to tell him about something, trying to send a signal, but I'm gonna hurt him if I do that, so I'm not gonna show him, right? So by not showing him, because I would break his identity, or I would hurt his emotions, or I would hurt him by showing it, then I'm not going to show it. So there's a censorship there. So it's like 2 aspects of ourselves doing that. There's an aspect that that has a need to see something of reality. There's another aspect of myself that knows it's too painful, so it's gonna block it. So
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
If there is not an active consciousness there of a certain configuration, of course, that consciousness, then, like, for example, I know that there's some things in reality that hurt me. And I sometimes when I don't have the capacity to deal with them, I censor them and put them in the to-do list for later. But I know
Yeah.
that at some point I'm gonna have to face those things and process them and feel them, and but I prefer that. But the thing is that I have that consciousness in the middle. I have that C in the center of the musical notes diagram. It's active. It's administrating all of that, right? It's active.
Yeah.
So yeah, I have the will and capacity to be like, okay, I can't handle this right now. I'll handle it later, but I'll have to handle it sometime. The thing is, if that C is not active, then that's gonna be like pushing, and then one day it's just gonna blow me over because I never integrated anything.
Mm.
You know?
Thank you. Yeah, for me it was not clear, or it was like what you say in the reaxis, or it was with other people or on another scale. So
yeah, it is
now
the
it's
same.
clear.
Okay, yeah. Same
Thank
same
you.
person.
Yeah. Clear.
Then the next one says, wait, censorship. Next one is, when things are symbolic, metrics disappear. For an instance, you can say, I have this value, and another person will say, okay. And then you say, but the way I value myself means that I want you to pay me $1 million every day because that is my worth. That's symbolic because it has no objective references. That is a person that needs to be left out completely of any plan. The example is clear, but do you know if that's the same with other less big things? I think she's using that analogy to explain what a symbolic metric is. And that example, I think we could talk about Putin, for example, right? His worth is infinite, right? And over here, like in the real world where everybody can see out in the open, we can probably all come together to a mutual agreement and say what his actual worth is, right? And that's going to be a more objective and consensuated value with objective references, and we can come to a more real value of the thing. But him, in his imagination, in his digital aspect, he is perfect and he is divine and he is whatever he wants to be. And no one can tell him otherwise. Like Maduro, for example. Maduro in Venezuela, he still thinks he's amazing. And the country's falling apart, right? So I think she's saying to that, like, someone that measures everything with their symbolic license is dangerous.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah,
they are
she was really strict in that one has to be placed out of society. So I was like, okay, are that only like those like very big examples, or also people in our surroundings we have to treat more that way? That was my thing, like,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, definitely. Like, I don't know if it happens for you. Like for me, I need to leave people out of my life that are 100% symbolic. I can't, it just triggers me. I can't validate it.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, the only thing I can do is not validate it, then that's what I'm gonna do. And I don't validate that. I don't validate it. Like that's why it's hard for me to make new friends. I met this girl. I was like, oh, a new friend, finally, right? And then they were like, oh, 11/11. Good luck. Da, 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 da. And I was just like, am I gonna do this, And that's just something that I cannot validate. So I'm sure it's gonna, of course, vary with our particular administration of ourselves in society and how we administrate our relationships and, what we're trying to do. But if we're talking like in a larger scale, of course, if the person is out of their minds, it means that they are still confusing primary, secondary with secondary unfoldment, and that is dangerous.
Yeah.
So it is a
About it last night as well, Nienke. Maybe, at the end that David say we have three kinds of people who are saying that they enlightened, for example, or you can say I'm $1 million worth, it's the same thing, but on another level. And David said the first is they are confused, the people. The second, they are ignorant. And the third, that's the dangerous one, said David, about the ego. And then he said, about the cult by the sector. And his advice was, Denise said, I don't want to give value to it because I'm also searching how to deal with this. And then David said, I put an inner membrane.
Yeah, you have to create the inner membrane.
It's very valuable.
Yeah.
And it depends on the level of
but that's because that was like, okay, the membrane part, but in these typical things, Alejandra was really like, put that people don't strict. Work with membranes, just put them out of society. So it was really strict. So I was like, okay, that's
treat them with like because they need space temporal treatment.
Yeah,
it's like the only solution.
Yeah. So that was how, like, okay, how do I have to place that? And indeed, I think there's a level like, okay, you have to work with membranes, and then when it's getting too much, then place it outside or
exactly
or something.
Because there could be a person that is mildly symbolic, right?
Yeah.
That I can tolerate, that I can use my membrane and tolerate it.
Yeah.
But then there are levels of just delusion that it's just biologically impossible.
Yeah.
My body shuts down. I found myself like, even though I'm trying, because I have respect, like I really have learned to respect people's licenses, right?
Yeah.
The thing is that my body doesn't help me. It
Yeah.
it like, it does this, like
Yeah.
I practically have to hold my head up when they're doing that because it just my body doesn't respond. My mind's
Yeah.
like, I understand, but my body doesn't want it.
Yeah. Yeah. For some things, I felt like, okay, some people you just have to, take distance and leave them there. And no, not, otherwise it's too much for yourself.
Yeah.
You don't have to deal with that,
No.
that kind of way.
And it's also not like maybe not in our scope, maybe at the
Yeah.
moment,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
or maybe it's something that, okay, if it's not within my reach, I can't deal with that. So Earth needs to deal with that. The structure needs to deal with that because the structure is the one that provides those licenses, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And their content. So, okay, just take my place and do what I can. And if there's a little opening for that person that wants to, do something different or learn a little bit different, maybe I can talk about it a little bit, but usually it's the membrane thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you.
So yeah, that's the last of the questions.
And also when after that meeting, you said that you talked quite short about the point she made about connecting two labels when dealing with situations, and that it was good for you to talk about that more clearly one day. Or do you still remember that? Yeah.
In the fifth stage video?
Yes.
Okay. Connecting with the labels, again, it has to do with an identity that's encapsulated with, if we do that, we're going to encapsulate ourselves in the anatomic, and we're never going to receive other kinds of signals, right? Because even if the signal is trying to tell me something in relation to the entorno, if I put a label on that and reduce it to whatever's available in the field, then the purpose or intentionality, original intentionality of that instruction, I'm not going to be receiving it. So like I'm going to be encapsulated in the anatomic, and I'm going to be repeating, because all I have is what's already expressed, or my past, my reactives, or my document, or my personal past, or the dragging influence of my ancestors, all of that, right? But this has to do with the creation of the y-axis, right? This has to do with that, because if we don't have a strong enough reference, like a not strong but like defined self-reference, particular definition, then like these influences are they're gonna move us around. They're gonna, because we don't have enough anchoring in our own reaxis, which is what, like by now we should have it quite fixed.
Yeah.
Mm.
And was she, because I was still I am placing like, okay, because she was talking about the hammer and the 3 stages, and she first was explaining them, and then she was really strict in like, okay, but that is the way, but don't use that as a label when situations happen. She was quite also strict in that.
In relation to the hammer labels.
Yes.
Yes, when we're talking about LGC, because again, LGC has to do with the frames. It doesn't have to do with the content. And the labels of hammer have to do with the content. And that is like another exercise for a processor, just knowing where each thing belongs and not contaminating other scales with what belongs to another scale, right? That fault we have of thinking that the universe is precarious because the observer observing the universe is precarious. We are attributing characteristics of the observer to what's being observed. But the universe is not precarious. We are, right?
Mm.
Same thing with the label thing.
Yeah.
We shouldn't attribute
Yeah.
labels of one instance, a specific content, shouldn't attribute that to my full interpretation of existence. What we're trying to do is actually amplify that by integrating logics of the different scales that conform the existence that we are experimenting. So the main thing is, and like what Ali has been talking about since the beginning, is that separation, the separation of things, the differentiation of things. Like, for example, separation of the body from the mind, from the context, from the consciousness, right? We're
Yeah, yeah.
separating them first, putting membranes in there, acknowledging the membranes, and then we can see later how all of those work together.
Yeah.
But we don't confuse one thing with the other. We need to learn to have a clear picture of like the whole, every element
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
its place, right? They are not like a big salad.
And is it then also correct that I think in a lot of ways when something happens, you know, we've learned to label it in one way or another, and we have to unlearn that because we used to do that because we thought that would help us, you know, that was the best way to deal with that,
Yeah.
or the connection to the whatever things. And now when I'm listening to her, then it's like, okay, don't do that like at all. It's
Like
like really,
neutralize it. If
what
you
is
are
it?
able to do it, because it's gonna depend on each receivers, because you can't tell anybody what to do, right? And
Yeah, yeah,
for me, I don't have to I have to stop myself from like making interpretations, yes,
yeah,
but I don't have to stop myself from using Hammer's references, for example, because they deactivated a long time ago. I don't
yeah. I know
come
what
up
you're saying.
anymore,
Yeah,
you know? They just naturally don't come up.
yeah,
It's gonna be different for everybody. Like maybe I'm gonna have to actively neutralize it
yeah,
or remove the value from it. Or like, for example, if I'm receiving in my body, I'm receiving an influence from
yeah,
an information that has to do with the information of my clan, and I'm recognizing it, then what I do is I neutralize it,
yeah, yeah.
right? Um,
I notice when other people do it, when I'm talking to them and they really give a lot of like value to the labeling, that I'm always, you know, like
yeah.
it's difficult to have, for me, it's difficult to have a conversation then because I'm like, yeah, you know, I don't think that's the right way, but for them, it is the best way they can deal with it.
It's the
So
only
it's,
thing they have. It's the
so,
only
so yeah. So I also like try to, yeah, when people are more close, like in my partner, I try to explain, but for them it's also really
Mm,
difficult. But I notice for myself, I get more strict in that I cannot, I cannot continue the conversation in that way. You know, I cannot talk with, yeah.
yeah. We're configured in a specific way, so
Yeah.
like probably those things are triggering. Yeah, definitely. And that's why we keep on saying this is a very solitary road, because you know, if there's a person that only has like the only resource they have is whatever the matrix provides as stereotypes, as meaning,
Yeah.
as content, that's all they have, because they can't, they just don't connect with anything else individually. That's all they have. And you know, then what we have to do is learn to respect that. And but I mean, of course the respect is there, but then when it comes to the communication, that's when it gets difficult, right? So it's like, oh, I want to get closer, but then we have that, so I have to step back again.
Yeah.
And with a partner, yeah, I mean, that if it's a person that's with you all the time. And for me,
Yeah.
you know, I talk with Francisco with, I'm lucky that, you know, he is resonant with this and all.
Your mom as well,
What
eh?
it would be. Uh,
Your mother as well, eh,
oh yeah,
Denise?
my mom. Yes. The three of us are like in this. It's
Lucky
building
you.
together. So I'm lucky to have that, yeah, because even though I have them, like I still get very lonely sometimes. I'm just like, I mean, I can talk to them, but still, like, I look around and I'm like, I feel so misunderstood. So,
Yes, I don't really mind about that, I think.
okay, that's good.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's really
Okay.
good. I still have to work on that. And I thought I was really good at it.
Yeah, that's why I also like, oh, I
I
think, you know,
know.
I'm not ready. Then something can happen and I'm like,
Yeah,
you know, but
sometimes
I
something
think,
happens because sometimes, like in the past, I was completely unbothered. But then I don't know if I got more sensitive or I don't know what happened, but I started to feel it a little bit. Something changed in me. And then I look back and I was like, why? Because before I was very unbothered. So I am exploring that newly acquired sensitivity. I don't know.
yeah.
So, yeah, we're close to the time. Anybody? Oh, do you want us to talk about nativo and nacido, Marceline?
If the others are open for it, yes, please, because I think we can repeat it and repeat it and repeat it on different angles.
Different days.
Yeah,
Just to do it on different days. Yeah.
yeah. And it's the last day of 20, so let's recreate.
Yeah. So, nativo has to do with the native configuration with which I was born, right? So, before I am born, uh, that previous instance from the desdoblado, the unfolded, kind of like makes a contract or a pact with the entorno, right? Now, that pact, I can say whatever because the restrictions of being born here weren't as high before. So I could come here and be like, oh, I'm gonna be perfect. I'm gonna be an angel. I'm gonna be so good. And then once I get the green pass, I come in here and I break everything, right? So that is like the nativo has to do with like the configurations that happen in prior instances to having a physical existence. That's nativo. So I am born with a native package, a native document that Earth needs to execute, right? So there's a beginning and an end. There's a destination of that document that Earth needs to execute. So once that destination is executed, Earth, that means you die, right? When your document is executed, that means you died. And Earth is like, hey, I did it. I fulfilled I executed your document. So we're good. I've fulfilled my part of the contract. Now, what I did with that, that's like going to be the content, right? That's going to be my native. Now, the nacido is an aspect that is newly activated. I don't know if it's newly activated because I think there have been people in the past with nacido qualities. I think they like people in the past that have that connection because the nacido quality has to do with a quality or an ability to receive setting variables or variables of the entorno. Because before I am born, I can do my best to prepare in my codification, in my document, I can do my best to bring as many resources that I'm gonna need to exist in this specific entorno. It's like going camping, right? If I'm a really good camper, if I know really well where I'm going, I am gonna have all the gear. I'm gonna have food, I'm gonna have water, I'm gonna be prepared for going to the bathroom, I'm gonna have a really cool camping site, I'm gonna have fire, I'm gonna have food, I'm gonna have everything, all the resources I need. But if I'm just like, if my identity is symbolic, I'm just like, the universe will provide. I'm just gonna go camping. I don't know where I'm gonna let the universe take me and guide me and give me what I need. La, 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 la. And then 3 days in the camping, I'm like, oh my God, I'm gonna die, right? I have no resources. Okay, so before I am born, it's gonna depend on the particle because You know, there's all kinds of particles, and it's going to depend on the particle. Does the particle know where it's going? Okay, it's going to have more resources. If the particle doesn't know where it's going, it's going to be like, oh, I just want an experience. Take me anywhere. I don't mind. You're going to go to a specific entorno and you're going to be like, oh, I didn't know I needed all of that. Like, I don't have it, right? Now, if the nacido quality is not activated, I'm not going to be able to update, take these variables from the entorno that I didn't contemplate before I was born. Okay? So if I don't have the nacido, I'm going to be stuck with with whatever resources I brought to the camping. I'm not going to be able to learn anything new from the entorno, right? This is like a quality in the, I would say, in the antenna, nacido. So the nacido has the capacity to add new qualities to the nativo, new things that weren't contemplated natively, right? And this again could only be done like add new qualities to the nativo. This could only be done by dying. And now the entorno is providing the possibility for us to do it when we sleep. Incorporate these notions, these new variables that the setting, because the setting is alive, right? Every day, the solar consciousness is transferring its dosified consciousness to us every day of the year. So we're every day, the entorno has new variables. Even though it's the same 15th of November, it's not last year's 15th of November, because 1 year has passed and we have absorbed all these variables and incorporated them. Is that a little better?
Yes.
Okay, good, because I am
So
tired.
they're working together. The Nacido received these variables from Entorno,
Mhm,
unfolded signals as well.
mhm.
And I wrote down, we learn from life, and this is what the Nacido will give to Nativo.
Learning from life is taking like because life is a closed cycle, right? It's something that's when we're talking about setting variables, we're talking about something that's not codified. Because life is something that's already expressed and being executed inside a cycle.
Okay,
Life
so
cycle.
it's better to use the word codify?
Signal, variable, receiving,
Okay.
because it's not the
Okay.
same to say learning from life, then receiving setting variables. Because when I'm receiving setting variables, I'm receiving something new, I'm codifying it and including it into the life cycle that I'm later going to learn from. So it's like prior. Yeah.
And the native, I'm born with the native document. And if it's expire or executed, then you die. But now we do this every night.
I mean, the document, it's going to be like if we're alive, there's a document being executed by Earth. It's being executed and we have a death date. It's just that the more we are able to align with these new qualities that the entorno is offering, then we're going to be able to modify that document without having to die.
Yes. And the earth needs this document. Yeah, this pre-document.
It's like oh, who's coming? Okay, what needs to be done? Okay, blah. But before that was like Earth, Earth. Ale describes it more like a printer. It couldn't say no. But now Gaia is like
Because She wants to work with the ancestor in 507, I understood. Through the ancestors.
Oh, she said that in the next apparatus, we're gonna be working with our grandparents, yes. But I don't know, she hasn't said much about that.
Yeah, nice.
We'll see.
I bought a new notebook today because I wrote this week, Denise.
That's good, yeah. Okay, you guys, well, that's our time. Thank you
Thank you so
for,
much.
Thank
Denise.
you, Denise. Thank
Here.
you.
And
Sorry
Jeff
for
and
my
Molly for this special meeting, extra meeting. Thank you.
Thank you so,
Thank
so
you.
much in this. Thank you. That's great.
really great to see you, Gabby. I know you're there, so
Ah,
Denise, do we see you in the next lab? Because we don't see David, but do we do the red program 125?
Yes, we're gonna do the red program, and we're not gonna have a cycle meeting next lab. We're gonna do, David and I, we're gonna do it together on the 22nd lab.
Yeah.
But yeah, we're gonna have the red program meeting next lab, yes. So I'll see you guys then.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you
Bye.
all.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.